Hi, I'm Ginny Rosenkrantz with the University of Maryland Extension. November. I tell you, I love November because we can have some really warm days. Yes, it can get cold and gloomy and all that, but still there are some warm days and you can get out in your garden and do a lot of really cool stuff. So I'm going to walk you through some things that you can do for plants that might want to come inside because we're going to get some cold nights. Decide whether you keep them or not. What to do with your the summer containers that, just were annuals, you're just going to dump them, and how to dress them up for the springtime through the fall. And also I'm going to show you what to do about gladiolus, which are wonderful summer flowers. And last but not least, I'm going to do a little bit of pond maintenance. Hopefully I will not fall into the pond. And I'm going to talk about why you need to get some of these plants out and how to put the netting on and all that good stuff. So join me for Delmarva Gardens coming up right now on Pack 14. Well, we're still going to have some beautiful warm days in November, and I love warm days in November because that means I get to go out in the garden and play. The other thing I want to point out is that we've had all summer long these beautiful plants like this hibiscus. This is a gorgeous hibiscus. It's a braided hibiscus, so it meant somebody took a lot of time when it was little to let it grow up and braid the branches and then let it even get larger so it has all these beautiful colors. And as you can see, we still have some buds that are trying very hard to open. And it's supposed to be pretty tomorrow, so maybe these guys will open. A lot of people have called me and say, well, can I just bring it inside? It's gorgeous. I've loved it all summer. And my response to them is, think about it first. I love this. If I had room in my house, I would bring it in. But then I started thinking about, well, even if I had a sunroom and room in my house for it, there are insects on here that I don't always see. This is like I said, it's hibiscus. So it's the kind of plant that has a lot of enemies. It has whitefly, it has mealybug, and it has scale. Now I don't see any whitefly or mealybug on this, but over the course of the summer I started noticing some scale. I'd like to point it out to you guys. It's really easy to see. It's bright white. Scale is the type of insect that has a soda straw type mouth, and what it does is it sticks it into the bark or into the leaf and it sucks all the juices up from the plant. So this is a very healthy plant still, even though some of the leaves have gotten a little bit frosted. It's still doing its best to continue to live. But if I bring this into my house, that scale will go everywhere. And I don't want that. So I'm going to just leave this outside where it can just quietly go to sleep on a really cold winter night. Oh, I'm so sorry for it. But there is a plant I'm going to go ahead and try to save. Come on over here. Now sometimes you have a plant that does merit coming in. And this is a really pretty begonia. It's one of the angel wing begonias. This one, the leaf has had some issues. This is actually probably drought issues because I'm not always the best waterer. But as you see, it's got flowers. And what I've done is this is small enough for me to really take a look at all of the leaves to see if this one can come in. And it is clean. So this is one that I'm going to go ahead and bring. The other thing you want to do is you want to take a look at the potting soil to see, is there anything that's living in here? Any little toads, any mice, any crickets. And then you want to take it and look on the underside to see if there's anything here that you don't want to bring into your house. So all of this stuff is kind of important to do before you actually bring in plants. Other things like this beautiful fern here, oh, this is so pretty. I would love to bring it in. But the other thing is, when you have to remember, is this fern is used to being outdoors with a lot of high humidity. I bring this inside. When I have the heater on in the wintertime, it's going to get warm, which is great, but it's going to get very dry. And that's going to lose a lot of leaves. And it's kind of going to go into a little bit of a shock. And I don't want to have to deal with that. So again, I'm going to get a nice new fern next spring because it keeps the economy going and I won't have to worry about it. It's an investment, but it's not that costly. So that's what I'm going to do for my indoor plants. Some of them are going to stay outdoors and a few of them are coming indoors. So what I'd like to do also is show you some pots that need to be renovated from their summer colors into the fall. So join me. Okay, well, the next thing I want to show you guys is, you know, we have all these beautiful summer flowers that I absolutely love, but they really are summer annuals, just as my hibiscus is, although some people like to bring them inside. These, no, you don't need to bring these inside. This was a beautiful combination plant. It just cascaded down. It had red, white, and purple. You notice that the bluish purple, that's my red right there. There's a little bit of purple around here somewhere still. So as you can see, it's still trying to bloom. Oh, here's the purple. Here we go. So we had red, white, and blue. And I love the patriotic colors. And they got really, really well with my blue pottery container. But like I say, time to go ahead and make a change. And rather than wait until these die off and look horrible, I'm going to be proactive. I've got these gorgeous tulips, red and white. And when they come up in the springtime, they're going to look gorgeous against the blue pottery. So what I'm going to do first is take the plant out of the pot. And as you can see, I kind of cheat. I have a plant in a pot like this, and it sits inside the pottery container. So let me go ahead and dump this here. There we go. Now, some people like to reuse the potting soil. I'm going to go ahead and mix up something new. So, let's see. I've got compost. I'm putting in. And it's a good idea every year or so to really dump out the old pottery soil and start fresh. Okay, there we go. I'm also going to go ahead and add some compost to it. This is very slow release. There we go. Oh, and I just got my pansies. These are what I'm going to be planting on top, and I'll talk about that later on. So let me go ahead and just mix this together. It's really not that difficult. You mix your compost and your potting soil. There you go. Now in the springtime, when I plant a new annual, I'll add more actual slow release fertilizer. And by adding slow release fertilizer, that way I can ensure that it'll have a good source of nutrients all through the summer. But bulbs don't need a lot, and neither do my pansies.
What are you doing now?
Okay, so I'm mixing up the water and the potting soil. And I have a gallon, so that's really good. You want to have the soil be evenly moist before you plant any kind of plant, because if the soil is too dry, it can actually rob the water from any of the plants that you plant, whether it's the bulbs or the pansies, and you don't want that. You can actually put too much water in, and if you do that, the cure is just add some more potting soil, which works out really well. So here they are, mixing it up. Now how you can tell you have the right amount? If you grab some soil and you squeeze really hard and no water comes out, but when you let open your hand, it forms a ball. That says, oh, you did a good job. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead, move these guys over here, and this over here. Clean pot, making sure it's clean. I should have scrubbed it out, but today I'm just gonna go ahead and fill it up. Okay, I filled it up to about 6 to 8 inches. And the reason why I'm going to stop right there is I'm going to add my tulips. So I have enough tulips for more than this pot, but I just like the idea of the red and white together and the red. When you buy the tulips, notice that there is a flat side and a fat side. The flat side you want to be on the inside, the fat side on the outside of the pot. That way the tulips, instead of coming out and waving around, will actually be upright and be beautiful. So I'm going to put these on in. There. There. And I always look at the bulbs, making sure they're okay. It's okay if they don't have that brown covering, but you don't want the bulbs to be mushy or to have an off color. There we go. So those are the red. And now I'm going to add the red and the white. And luckily they're different types of bags, so it will be easy when I redo them. So once again, I'm going to go ahead and put it in there, in between, there. And yes, they're very, very close together, but when I'm done in the springtime, after these guys are done, I will actually dig up the potting soil and remove these tulips. And because if I leave them in during the summer, our summers are very hot, especially in a container like this, and the tulip bulbs will actually cook. Not a good thing. Then they'll get mushy and they'll rot, and that smells bad. So once they're done, I'm just going to go ahead and clean everything else out. So I've got this here, and I'm going to add some more potting soil. One of the mistakes that a lot of people make when they're playing with tulips and daffodils is they're following the old-fashioned rules that if this is 1 inch, you need to plant it at least 3 times the size. So 1, 2, 3. So that's like really only 4 inches. These actually like to be 6 to 8 inches deep. Why? Well, first of all, they will get a little bit more relief from the heat of the sun, since we are in a very, very hot part of the world. We're not as far south as, like, say, Florida, but in our summers can get to be 95 degrees for months. And that's too hot for these tulips unless they're down into the soil where it's a little bit cooler. So keep in mind, the deeper you plant them, the happier they're going to be. And actually, they'll actually bloom better. And sometimes, if I plant them in the garden that deep, they'll bloom year after year after year, which is a positive. Quite often, you have to watch out for these because voles love these, deer love these, and that's why they're going into a pot instead of in my garden. Okay, so I've got this right here. This is a winter pansy mix. I just wanted to show you guys that. It says penny winter mix. So it's a viola. This is actually one of the little miniature ones. It's not a true pansy. It's a miniature, a viola. But they will stay really pretty all through the winter and then come up like gangbusters in the spring. So once again, I break the roots. You guys have seen me do this 1,000 times. And put that in the soil. There we go. Pop this out. Now, one thing you should do is, like this has got some, this flower has already finished blooming right here. Yikes, there we go. And I just need to pinch that off. There we go. Okay. And I'm only going to go ahead and put 4. Like I said, by doing this, if I have any friends that come over who smoke, and I do have friends that enjoy a cigar on occasion, they're going to look at this and go, oh, there's plants in there. And they won't put anything in here like cigarette ashes or something like that. Apparently, people who do smoke and think that this is just an empty pot will go ahead and put their cigarette ashes here. This soil is something that can actually catch on fire. So you really, really want to make sure people realize that it is something you don't want them to put their cigarette ashes in. And having a fire in something like this close to your house, that could be disastrous. Okay, so now I'm going to take this out and put this right in here. And there we go. So you can tell now it's a pot within a pot, but eventually the violas will grow up big and fill out. And then, of course, my tulips will come up and they'll look gorgeous. I love to do that kind of stuff. Okay, I also have something else I want to show you. I have some gladiolas that need to be lifted, and they are what they call a tender perennial. So let's go ahead and lift some glads and see if we can save them for next year. Okay, well, once again, these are summer perennials, but these are what we call tender perennials, meaning that they are perennial further south, but not as far south as the hibiscus. So some people can go ahead and leave these in the ground, especially if they're close to, say, a building that will sort of retain the heat. I have some beautiful dahlias that I have had blooming for the past 40 years, but they're planted right beside the house. So they're getting a little bit of the heat from the house, and it's also on the west side, so they get a little bit of heat from the sun at that point. And I've never dug them up. I should probably dig them up and separate them, but that's another day. So with these guys, I'm going to go ahead and dig up these. They're fairly shallow rooted. Okay, that's good. And this is not a bulb, this is actually corm. And this was last year's growth. And as you see, it's flattened out and there's really nothing left. So we can pull this off like that. And you have all these little teeny bulblets right here that can be for in a couple of years. But what I'm going to do right now is, let's see if this works. Just cut this off and I'm going to put it right down here and I'm going to let it dry. So by doing that, if I get a couple more of these out, I can go ahead and store them in a fairly warm place. And it has to be, let's see, there we go, at least over 40 or something like that. And there we go. So I'm going to let the soil dry off and I'll go ahead and dig the rest of them up later on. But I can go ahead and store them in the garage or a room that I don't use a lot and keep them so that they're not going to go below freezing. That's the important thing. They cannot go below maybe say 40 degrees. I had some caladiums and I have dug them up for years and years and years. And this year I didn't dig them up. And in October we had one day that went down to 32 and we had 2 days of frost and that was way too cold for my caladiums. So I've kind of lost those. But come back here, I want to share something with you guys. I think it's so cool. In the fall, there's still a lot of things that are blooming. And this is one of my roses that I just absolutely love. Look how gorgeous that deep red is. And then underneath the rose are these two rose hips, which are the seed pods. And they're starting to turn a bright, bright red. They're high in vitamin C, so a lot of people like to go ahead and make a tea out of them or eat them. I wouldn't suggest that. But I leave them there for the birds to enjoy. Because in the wintertime, there's a lot of winter birds that need to have something sweet and full of good nutrition, and there's vitamin C in there too, and they're thrilled with all that. So, okay, one last thing that I'm going to go ahead and do to winterize my garden is I'm going to go ahead and winterize my pond. Last year I fell in the pond. This year I'm trying to be a little bit more sophisticated and stay out of the pond. Okay, join me. Well, on the way to the pond, I just had to share, again, some more roses because, you know, in the summer, they basically slowed down a lot because 95-degree temperatures, things stopped blooming an awful lot. And then again, in the summertime, we had the Japanese beetles and we had 3 different types of rose slugs, and they just really made everything look nasty. This is fall, most of the bugs are gone, but these guys are still in bloom. You can notice that the sweet potato vine is showing a lot of signs of frost. And that's why we've got all this black hair and all that kind of stuff. And yet, look how gorgeous the roses are. They're so pretty. And right beside it is the lilies that have just, you know, they've gone dormant. And they're fine. Okay, onto the pond. Well, even ponds need a little bit of TLC, especially as we go into the fall. Right now, I have all these beautiful water hyacinths in full bloom right now. And it's like, oh my gosh, why would I take them out? Well, because if we have a couple of really cold days, these will die because they're very much tropical. And as you can see, a lot of these, like for instance this one right here, you can see that the leaves are already bitten by the frost. It's kind of an interesting term, bitten by the frost, but they are frosted, so some of the foliage is actually dead. Whereas the ones that were more protected, closer up to their friends, are not as, you know, frosted. So I'm going to go ahead and get these out. The reason why is if they do go ahead and die, and I just leave them here, as they decompose, they rob oxygen from the water. Now, every time I keep the pump going on, I keep that pump going on all year, spring, summer, winter, and fall, it's always adding oxygen as the water bounces down into the water. But it's always a good idea to go ahead and get this stuff out because it does a great job of filtering the excessive nutrients that my fish have. But as they decompose, like I say, they're going to rob all the oxygen and my fish will suffer from that. So that's not what we want to do. Last year we went ahead and made a safe place for the fish to hide over the fall. And that's still in place, so I'm sure my fish are fine underneath here. And I'm just going to go ahead and get this much done. So as you see, it doesn't take much. You might have slimy smelling fingers, so you can go ahead and wear gloves. I would, if you're going to wear, like, say, a latex gloves or rubber gloves, make sure they're not the ones that you use with lots of heavy chemicals and all that, because you don't want to hurt the fish. And oh my goodness, I do see my fish. Hello, guys. So I have a lot of bright goldfish down here, and by pulling this stuff up, I can go ahead and keep the pond a lot clearer. The other thing I want to do, here's one of my little balls that sort of float in there. I have this plant right here. Let me get it out of the pond. Now this is something that needs to be cut back, and looks like these guys have grown into it too. As I pull this stuff out, I'm actually looking to make sure I don't have any fish in here too. I don't want to hurt any fish. No fish were damaged in this filming of Delmarva Gardens. Okay, so as you can see here, I have a lot of area where the pot is busted. So I'm going to have to take this apart totally and take only a portion of this. This is what's called horse rush, or rushes, scouring rushes. And I'm going to have to take the whole thing apart and replant it, and go ahead and put it back in for the winter time. But I'm going to go ahead and cut the tops off also, because once I've got all that done, then I'm going to get the netting and put the netting out. So what I'll have to do is cut back some of the shrubs, take all of these plants out, cut this back and repot it. And I have some calla lilies that are still in bloom over there at the other side, and I just going to have to remove all of those. So once all that's done, I'm going to go ahead and put this down. The reason why I'm doing that is I have a lot of trees that the leaves will fall in. And again, as the leaves decompose, they're going to go ahead and rob oxygen. And also it fills the pond up with muck, and I don't need that either. I won't put the screen on top of the top part of the waterfall because I don't think it needs it. But this way, the waterfall will continue to work. The fish will get oxygenated. They're going to be actually safer from predators because predators cannot get through this. And what I'll do is I'll put the netting down, and I have these rocks that I put the netting here, and then I put the rock on top. And that'll keep it nice and safe until the springtime when it gets warm, and I can get some water hyacinths or water lettuce, and just keep everything going. I just love springtime. So I do all this work in the fall, so I know that spring is coming. So anyways, that's my gardening job for this day. Thank you so much for joining me at all my little gardening projects right here on Delmarva Gardens on Pack 14.